between myself and $28 billion. If I were to prune a few branches.
The story of How to Make a Killing reimagines the crime thriller genre with a blend of stylish tension, morally ambiguous characters, and a narrative that constantly shifts between calculated precision and chaotic consequence. It opens in an urban landscape pulsing with ambition and risk, where the line between legal enterprise and underworld opportunity has grown thin and unstable. This is not a world where crime is glamorized for its own sake. It is a world shaped by need, desperation, and the seductive promise of power. At its core, the movie explores how a calculated plan can unravel when human complexity enters the equation, turning logic into vulnerability and confidence into chaos. The protagonist is someone who lives in the margins of legality, a person shaped by systems that failed them and opportunities that never fully materialized. For years, they have watched others rise through talent, luck, or privilege while they remain tethered to the edges of survival. This simmering frustration does not make them a villain, it makes them human. They are driven neither by malice nor blind ambition, but by a desire to rewrite a destiny that always seemed out of reach. When the idea of making a killing presents itself, it feels less like a crime and more like a chance at justice, not just for wealth, but for recognition and agency in a world that has always ignored them. The plan itself is meticulously crafted, a product of deep observation and careful strategy. It involves manipulating financial markets, exploiting loopholes in the system, and anticipating human behavior with near-surgical precision. The protagonist does not carry a weapon, but rather a mind trained to analyze patterns, anticipate risk, and exploit weaknesses. Their advantage comes from intellect and timing rather than brute force. This cerebral approach sets the story apart, making it as much a psychological thriller as a crime drama. Instead of watching physical chases and gunfights, audiences are invited into a world where every decision carries. Layered implications and every misstep could lead to ruin. Early stages of the plan unfold with surprising success. Small victories build confidence and momentum. It feels like every variable has been accounted for, every contingency prepared. The financial moves are elegant in their complexity, almost poetic in execution. Yet the protagonist's colleagues and acquaintances do not always grasp the deeper logic at work. They see only the surface, the numbers rising, the wealth accumulating, the possibility of freedom finally within reach. This difference in understanding creates tension, because while the protagonist sees patterns and consequences, others see only potential reward. Their optimism blinds them to the fragility of the structure they are all relying upon. Relationships in the story are not black and white. Allies are unpredictable, and even enemies are nuanced. One character may outwardly appear loyal but harbor secret motivations, while another may seem self-interested but reveal unexpected empathy. These interpersonal dynamics add emotional texture to a plot that could otherwise feel purely mechanical. The protagonist's struggle is not only against external systems, but against internal conflict, guilt, doubt, and the fear that success might cost them more than failure ever did. Their closest relationships are tested as secrets grow heavier and truths become increasingly difficult to conceal. As the plan scales, so do the stakes. What once seemed like a calculated game of strategy becomes a dangerous dance with forces larger than any single person. Regulatory agencies, rival operators, and old figures from the protagonist's past begin to surface in ways that feel too coincidental. The tension shifts from financial maneuvering to survival. Every phone call feels like a test, every glance carries suspicion. The city itself becomes a character, its neon lights and glass towers reflecting both ambition and disillusionment. The soundtrack mirrors this psychological tension, blending electronic pulses during moments of calculation with quieter, more introspective tones during moments of emotional conflict. Rather than overwhelming the narrative, the music accentuates it, making each sequence feel like a heartbeat, rising, falling, then rising again. Silence also plays a role, especially in scenes where the protagonist must confront the reality of what they have set in motion. These quiet moments often carry more weight than the high-tension sequences because they reveal vulnerability and introspection behind the facade of control, external. Pressure begins intensifying when unexpected variables disrupt the plan. A sudden market shift, a regulatory audit, or an unpredictable reaction from a rival forces the protagonist to adapt in real time. Their ability to improvise is tested, and what once seemed like rigid logic now requires fluid intuition. This thematic shift highlights that no system, no matter how meticulously planned, can ever fully account for the chaotic nature of human behavior. The plan begins fracturing, not because of flaw in its original design, but because life itself refuses to stay predictable. At the same time, internal conflict within the protagonist reaches a boiling point. The pursuit of wealth and what it represents grows heavier as consequences materialize. Friends become collateral damage, trust becomes a currency harder to earn than money, and the moral cost of success becomes increasingly visible. These emotional layers elevate the story beyond a simple crime thriller. The narrative becomes a meditation on ambition, consequence, and the paradox that the thing we think will save us can sometimes be the very force that destroys us. As opposition tightens, the protagonist must make choices that redefine the original intention of the plan. What began as a quest for financial freedom turns into a desperate attempt to preserve dignity, protect loved ones, and regain a sense of self in a world that constantly objectifies success as a number. The evolution of their motivation reveals that wealth was never the true objective. Agency, recognition, and self-worth were. This thematic pivot deepens the emotional resonance of the story, because viewers come to understand that the real battle was not against systems, but against internalized definitions of failure and worth. The narrative accelerates toward an explosive climax where all variables collide. Rival forces close in, personal relationships fracture, and the protagonist must confront the consequences of every choice made along the way. The tension peaks not through action set pieces, but through psychological confrontation, a collision of intention and outcome. The protagonist comes to see that control is always an illusion, and that life's unpredictability can either shatter us or redefine us depending on how we respond. In the final sequences, the outcome is not a traditional victory. There is no simple moment of triumph with doors opening and wealth flowing in. Instead, the resolution arrives through acceptance and clarity. The protagonist makes a choice that embraces imperfection and acknowledges the cost of ambition. Rather than clinging to the original plan, they choose a path that reflects evolved values, compassion, connection, and self-knowledge. It is a bittersweet conclusion because it resists the comfort of a neatly packaged ending, reflecting the unpredictable nature of life itself. The emotional resolution is where How to Make a Killing shines. It demonstrates that the most powerful transformations often occur not through outward success, but through inward growth. Viewers are reminded that while systems can be manipulated and numbers can be calculated, the human heart, with its vulnerability, hope, and fear, remains beautifully unpredictable. The protagonist's journey becomes a reflection of the universal struggle to find meaning in a world governed by uncertainty. This story is not just about crime, money, or power. It is a psychological exploration of ambition, consequence, and the human condition. By weaving together meticulous plotting with deep emotional introspection, the movie reveals that while plans can be crafted with precision, life's true trajectory is shaped by moments of choice and connection that cannot be fully anticipated. In a world obsessed with control and outcomes, How to Make a Killing reminds us that the value of a life is never measured in profit alone, but in the courage it takes to change course when the world demands certainty yet offers none.